she leans closer. Not with words, but with the quiet pressure of presence, the tilt of her shoulder, the glance that lingers just a second longer than it should. And in that fragile space between invitation and illusion, countless men have surrendered without realizing they were being measured. What feels like affection is often a test. Seduction rarely begins as love. It begins as theater. It is the curve of a smile used like a blade, the slight touch meant to awaken craving, the pause designed to stretch a man's patience thin. Most men fail to see it because their hunger clouds their vision. They are so eager to be wanted that they mistake performance for sincerity, and in doing so they show exactly how easily they can be moved. The Stoics warned about this very trap, because they knew that nothing enslaves a man faster than his inability to govern his own desire. Consider how quickly lust exposes weakness. A man may speak of discipline, of calmness, of purpose, yet the smallest gesture, a hand brushing his arm, a laugh drawn out just enough to sound intimate, and suddenly he is rewriting his identity to fit her attention. He believes he is chosen when in truth he has only reacted. He confuses being tested with being valued. This is why so many stories of passion collapse into bitterness. The foundation was never strength, only impulse. The Stoic response was not to reject beauty or intimacy, but to strip away its disguise. Marcus Aurelius wrote that what excites the senses should be broken into its smaller parts so the mind can see what lies beneath the surface. The Stoic understood that if you can stand in the presence of temptation without being ruled by it, you demonstrate a power that leaves an impression deeper than indulgence ever could. Desire restrained becomes presence. Presence, when grounded in discipline, becomes unforgettable. Imagine her expectation when her gesture does not move you, when her glance does not make you stumble, when her closeness does not bend your voice or your frame. In that silence, she learns something about you, that you are not the kind of man who can be redirected by lust. That is why restraint marks the memory more than indulgence. Anyone can be seduced, but not everyone can stand calmly in the fire of it. And so the first Stoic warning is this: seduction is less about her interest and more about your control. And the man who can see through the play without being swept into it leaves a trace that lasts far longer than desire itself. Every seduction carries a question hidden inside it, a quiet challenge wrapped in attraction, a way of asking not what kind of man you want to be, but what kind of man you already are. And most never realize they are being examined until they have already failed. A woman's glance, her playful touch, her subtle lean closer, these are not only signals of interest, they are also instruments of measurement. They test whether you are grounded or whether you tremble at the slightest suggestion of intimacy. The mistake men make is believing that seduction exists only for pleasure, when in truth it often exists to reveal hierarchy. If you bend instantly to desire, you show yourself to be ruled. If you remain steady, you show that your will is stronger than the atmosphere around you. The Stoics saw this dynamic centuries ago. They lived in a world filled with distractions, temptations, and power games, and they understood that temptation was rarely about the object itself but about the reaction it provoked. Epictetus wrote that what disturbs a man is not the event but his judgment of the event. A smile cannot control you, a soft word cannot bind you, unless you allow it to. In this sense, seduction becomes a mirror. It reflects your level of mastery back to you. Think of the man who responds instantly to a seductive cue. He believes he is being chosen, but in reality he has only revealed his predictability. He has shown that his emotions can be steered with the smallest gestures. Now consider the man who does not break his frame, who does not lean forward when she leans in, who keeps his tone measured and his gaze calm. In that instant the balance shifts. He is no longer being tested, he is the one setting the terms. She is left uncertain, and that uncertainty deepens her attention. What makes this powerful is not arrogance or dismissal, but composure. The Stoic man does not need to reject seduction aggressively, nor does he chase it desperately. He simply stands as he is, revealing that his worth does not depend on her performance. This unsettles, because it is rare. In a world where most men crumble at the smallest sign of allure, the man who remains unmoved becomes unforgettable, precisely because he is not like the rest. Seduction, then, is not about conquering another person. It is about conquering yourself. When you pass that test, you communicate without words that you are not seeking validation, that your presence is not up for negotiation. And it is this message, more than any clever line or romantic gesture, that imprints itself in her mind and refuses to fade. Lust reveals a man faster than any confession he could make, because it strips away the image he tries to project, and shows the hunger he cannot control, and in that exposure lies both his downfall and his chance to rise above it. The surface of lust looks harmless, a spark, a glance, a rush of adrenaline that feels natural. But beneath that spark is the truth. The man who cannot sit with desire without rushing to satisfy it becomes owned by it. His identity bends around his cravings. He starts to measure his worth not by his discipline, but by how often those cravings are answered. And that is where weakness becomes obvious, because the man who is ruled by hunger can be directed by anyone who knows how to feed it. The Stoics were blunt about this. They warned that unchecked desire corrodes character. Seneca wrote that slavery is not only political but personal, that the man who must have pleasure is no freer than the man chained in iron. Lust becomes a chain because it convinces you that without fulfillment you are incomplete, when in truth the opposite is correct. The more you can hold steady in the presence of temptation, the more complete you already are. Look at how lust works in practice. A man sees a woman dressed in a way that ignites him, and before he has even spoken to her, he begins to change his behavior. His voice shifts, his posture collapses, his decisions tilt toward what might keep her attention. He has not chosen. He has been chosen by his own lack of restraint. Lust has exposed him. She does not need to know his philosophy, his ambitions, or his strength. She only needs to know that a look can move him, and that is enough to decide his place in her world. Contrast that with the man who sees beauty clearly, but does not lose clarity. He notices, but he does not chase. He feels attraction, but he does not confuse it for destiny. He allows desire to exist without making it his master. This kind of control unsettles, because it is rare. It makes others wonder what power lives behind that restraint. That curiosity lingers long after the moment has passed, and it is precisely this presence that makes him unforgettable. The lesson is not to deny lust, but to expose it for what it is, a signal, not a command. When you learn to look at desire without bowing to it, you strip it of control and turn it into strength. That is why Stoicism warned men not against passion itself, but against surrendering blindly to it. For the man who governs lust does not lose fire. He gains the authority to choose when and how that fire will burn.
Silence unsettles more than any clever line, because in the absence of reaction a woman begins to see herself. And in that mirror she realizes whether her seduction has true power or only the illusion of it. Most men cannot endure silence. They rush to fill it with explanations, with compliments, with promises, with constant assurance that they are interested. They believe that words will win favor, when in truth their noise only reveals their fear of being forgotten. The Stoics understood this weakness, and they practiced the opposite. They treated silence not as a void but as a form of presence. To remain calm and unshaken in stillness is to send a message stronger than any performance. You are not desperate to be heard, and you do not require approval to exist. The warning is simple. When you always answer, when you always explain, when you always chase, you train her to see you as predictable. She knows your next move before you make it. But when you let silence stand, when you let a gap remain after her provocation or her test, you introduce uncertainty. And uncertainty creates weight. She cannot easily place you, and so her mind continues to return to you. Imagine a conversation where she teases or challenges you, expecting a quick defense. The average man will explain himself, defend himself, try to win her back with words. The Stoic man pauses. He lets the moment breathe. He allows the challenge to dissolve in quiet air. That pause speaks louder than a paragraph. because it shows he does not bend under the pressure of being misunderstood. He refuses to turn silence into weakness. He uses it as strength. This principle reaches beyond relationships. In every part of life, those who cannot sit in silence reveal their dependence on noise. They fear what others will think if they stop talking. But the Stoics taught that silence is where the self is measured. A man who can remain still, calm, unhurried, communicates something rare, that he is led by his own rhythm, not by the demands of others. For a woman testing the limits of her influence, that silence becomes unforgettable. She cannot dismiss it. She cannot fully interpret it. She is left with the memory of a man who did not try to prove himself, who did not scramble for approval, who did not collapse under the weight of misunderstanding. That mark stays longer than charm ever could, because silence is not only the absence of words, it is the presence of power. The warning then is clear. Every word you give away too quickly dilutes your presence, but every silence you hold with calm dignity carves your image deeper into her mind. Control is the hidden currency in most relationships. And the moment a woman realizes she cannot control you, her perception of you changes forever, because she is no longer dealing with the kind of man she expected, but with the kind of man she cannot easily predict. From the beginning, subtle acts of control appear disguised as affection. The request to adjust your schedule, the playful complaint meant to guide your behavior, the unspoken expectation that you will bend to keep her satisfied. Many men comply without thinking. They believe that love is shown in endless compromise, that approval must be earned through constant adjustment. But the Stoics warned that to give away control of your actions is to lose control of your soul. The man who bends too quickly to keep peace ends up with neither peace nor respect. What unsettles her most is not rebellion, but indifference to control. When you choose your actions based on principle, not pressure, you create a boundary that she cannot cross. She might test you with silence, with distance, with sudden bursts of emotion, all of it designed to see if you will fold. But when you do not collapse, when you remain steady, something shifts. She realizes that her influence does not reach as far as she imagined. That realization creates both tension and fascination, because it forces her to confront a truth she rarely encounters. You cannot be moved like the rest. This is not cruelty, and it is not stubbornness for its own sake. It is a discipline rooted in self-respect. The Stoics held that the only true possession a man has is his reasoned choice, his capacity to act according to principle. To hand that over to another person, even someone you desire, is to abandon the very core of who you are. And so when you live by your own standard, you show not arrogance but authenticity. You reveal that her approval is welcome, but not required. Think of the effect this creates. Most men chase reassurance. They argue when she withdraws. They panic when she goes silent. They shift their entire frame to restore harmony. The man she cannot control does not panic. He stays in his rhythm. He allows her to walk away if she chooses, not because he is careless, but because his identity does not vanish with her absence. That kind of stability leaves an impression stronger than charm, stronger than passion, because it speaks of an independence that is both rare and unshakable. And so the warning is clear. If she can move you at will, you become ordinary. But if you remain yourself in the face of her tests, you become extraordinary. In that realization, you leave behind not the memory of a man who obeyed, but the presence of a man she could never fully possess. What truly makes a man unforgettable is not a single gesture or a fleeting moment of passion, but the quiet consistency of living by principles that do not bend to circumstance. Because when your presence is guided by discipline rather than impulse, you become the standard against which others are measured. She may forget the man who chased her, the one who filled the air with promises, the one who bent his schedule and his soul to stay in her orbit. But she will not forget the man who held his ground when silence arrived, who met seduction without stumbling, who did not surrender to the easy intoxication of lust, and who revealed without force that his life was directed by something greater than her approval. That kind of presence is not common, and because it is not common, it lingers. The Stoics knew that influence comes not from chasing admiration but from embodying values so clearly that others cannot help but remember you. A calm gaze in the midst of provocation, a measured response in the middle of tension, an unshaken posture when control is tested. These are not tricks, they are disciplines. They do not just impress for a moment, they carve an image into memory that resists fading. A woman may move on, but in the quiet spaces of her reflection she recalls the man who was not owned by her emotions, and that memory becomes difficult to erase. This is the paradox of becoming unforgettable. It happens when you stop trying to be unforgettable. You do not earn permanence by forcing your image into her mind. You earn it by living so authentically that her mind cannot dismiss you. She remembers not because you demanded it, but because you revealed a strength she rarely encountered. In a world full of men who bend, you did not. In a world full of noise, you remained still. In a world desperate for attention, you stood without begging for it. That is why she remembers. And so the final warning is this: if you want to leave a mark, do not chase it. Live in such a way that your presence speaks louder than pursuit. Let your discipline become your voice, let your silence become your weight, and let your self-control become the memory that outlasts desire. If this message resonated with you, remember, strength grows when it is shared. Like this video if it gives you clarity, share it with someone who needs the reminder, and subscribe to Philos Honor so you never miss the next lesson. Your support keeps this work alive, and together we'll continue uncovering the truths that modern men were never taught but desperately need.